Hello and welcome, Exiles, to a look at the build I've been working on. Forbidden Rite of Soul Sacrifice, cast on crit enabled by Occultist. This is probably going to be build of the league for me. This character is an absolute monster. We started it a couple days ago when we had very few divines to our name because we voided our character, and I want revenge. This character will send a message to those void maps, just like previously when I died to a table. I will avenge dying to a couple of Shaper balls from off screen. So help me, Shaper will fear me. Now, how does this character work, or why can we use this skill? It's all thanks to Whispers of Infinity. Skills cost energy shield instead of mana or life. Previously, you basically had to play a weird hybrid setup so you could afford the life cost of the skill, which meant you would take a ridiculous amount of damage, and it was ultimately, I've tried it multiple times, it was just too much of a downside to play around in terms of how it limited your scaling. Now that we can play CI with Whispers of Infinity, it opens a whole gateway of power for this specific skill. And let's go ahead and showcase you what I've been doing. I've been doing some bum rush mapping. Sorry, not bum rush mapping. I've been bum rushing bosses. I've been boss rushing with basically an Atlas with a bunch of mod effect because I'm trying to find multiple fragments. So this will give you an idea of what this character looks like in a mapping scenario. It's pretty much just you throw down your Lancing Steel and then you just keep on moving. Your Lancing Steel will last like half a second to 3/4 of a second, and it'll keep proccing after you walk past the pack. So it kind of has this like continued trigger even though if you keep running. So it's really kind of chill to play. Eventually I'd like to do a cast when crit Cyclone setup, but I think that kind of needs a Mage Blood, and I just don't have the budget for a Mage Blood yet, which would allow much better movement speed and would feel a lot better to play all in all. This map has like 27 pen. You'd probably be a little bit careful around how these monsters, you know, attack speed 27 pen's a bit dangerous. But for the most part, we have some pretty crazy defenses with block, recoup, high ES, leech, regen, fortify from this dude. For the most part, we're not going to have too much issues surviving. So that's just a look at what the character looks like in terms of gameplay. Super chill to play, super high defenses. I leveled all the way from, I think, 96 to 97, doing T17 full mod effect 130 quant plus maps, and I didn't die once doing it. Did that yesterday on stream if you want to check the VOD if you're curious. Now, how do the mechanics of this character work? There's a lot of mechanics, and I'm going to break down a few of them. Number one is we decided to build around Supreme Ostentation. I don't think this is the best way to min-max in terms of scaling the ES, but it is a very, very efficient way to do it when you're on a budget. If you're starting to min-max, you start needing int on every gear piece, all your gear cost becomes exponentially more, and so this allows you to make a pretty strong character on a budget. I also like combining this with the Impossible Escape and the Elegant Hubris notables. For example, we got damage per power charge, ES per power charge, ES per power charge, and spell block. You can also do this combination on the other side with an Impossible Escape on Mind Over Matter. I would recommend looking up the Timeless Jewel Calculator or the one in Path of Building. There are lots of versions of this jewel where you can get 4 really good stats for the build. Just fish around and find one on a budget. Do not buy the exact same number. You do not need the exact same number. You just want to look for good stats like spell damage, like damage per charge, like ES per power charge, and so on. And did the California server crash? Hold on, let me reboot. I guess we'll try a different server. Hello? Did my internet crash? I don't know exactly, but I guess I'll cut. Okay, so that was my internet cutting out. Apparently I got an outage where I live. So right now we're on a mobile hotspot on my phone. So I'm not gonna do any more gameplay footage, but for the most part, mobile hotspot should be good enough to go over the mechanics of the character. Now, I was saying before I cut off that there's a lot of good stats to get: crit multi, damage per charge, ES per charge, spell block, attack block. Basically what you want to do is do the Timeless Jewel Calculator, select a bunch of notables that can occur within the Impossible Escape, either do this side or this side, along with the notable here, because the Timeless Jewel should reach that as well. And then search for yourself a jewel that has maybe at least 3 or 4 good stats is what I would look for. So that's the idea. And that allows you to get some nice extra value on top of the fact Supreme Ostentation disables all attribute requirements. One of the things about this character is we got a lot of annoying attribute requirements, and unless you have a really high int invested character in terms of like percent int scaling, 1-to-1, the tattoo 3% ES is just better than int is on the tree, because this requires for flat int on your tree to be competitive with this, you need at least 50% increased attributes on your like gear or tree or whatever. And that's going to be costing you a lot to invest into, which means if we do this thing here, we get rid of all the attribute requirements. All of a sudden that frees up a bunch of suffixes to fix our res, makes the gear cheaper to craft, and then we just tattoo all of our int nodes to %ES. Ultimately, this will be one of the most expensive portions of getting this character up and running. Int tattoos are about, I think, 25 to 30C. I spent about 21C, 22C per tattoo, but I checked the market earlier today and they've been going up. So they're closer to 30C now. You're going to end up using like 20 to 30 tattoos roughly. I'm not sure exact number. I didn't count them, but the idea is we get a bunch of %ES scaling and we fix our attribute requirements, which makes all of our gear a lot more loose in terms of what we can craft on it, because it's a lot easier to get a couple of random res rolls than it is to get like T1 int on every gear slot. Another mechanic we're doing is we're using Bound by Destiny. This is a new jewel, and I want to stress, and this is very important to stress, do not try to exactly copy this. If you want to do this build on a budget, there are two very big things you can do to cut like over half the cost out of the build, and one of them is do not stress about copying this. But what we're doing is I'm forcing on a bunch of influences to get a bunch of tagged affixes, basically endurance charge gen, +1 max power charge, and CDR. These things are very rare to get the specific mods you want. Think Watcher's Eye, think getting the ideal 3 affixes on a Watcher's Eye. It's very rare to come by. Me being the first person doing this type of setup, I got this jewel for 5 divines, but the thing is there were only 2 on trade. You know what I mean? It's not something you can readily copy, but it also isn't something that makes or breaks the build. Losing 1 power charge loses you about 10% damage, but the thing is, you lose the power charge, and all of a sudden, you don't need influence on your Malachai's Loop, you could get a Corrupted Implicit. You don't need influence on your Ralakesh Impatience, all of a sudden, you don't have to use Omen of Fortune, and you can just buy a power charge base for like 1 to 2D. You don't need a helmet with Warlord and Crusader influence. All of a sudden, you can just grab a random unique that has like 300 ES. I did Vertex initially when I started this character, it was like a 300 ES helmet with +1 power charge, cost me 120 chaos. You cut a ton of your cost if you don't min-max. So if you're trying to do this character on a budget, that's step number 1. As for the mechanics behind this, I am getting every one of these affixes, which means CDR for this 52 breakpoint. Real quick talk about cooldown reduction times and cast on crit. The breakpoints are as follows. 0 CDR means you need to hit an enemy like every 6 times a second. 14% CDR is the next breakpoint, which means you need to hit the enemy every like 7.57 seconds or 7.57 times per second. And then the next breakpoint is 52 CDR, which is 10.1 hits per second. The idea is if you're on a budget, you only need to hit that first breakpoint and you can chill for a while. And you can hit that breakpoint either by just having like a level 2 or level 3 Awaken Cast on Crit, or you can hit the breakpoint by just having a 1 mod 18% CDR Bound by Destiny. 1 mod is going to cost you, less than a divine or whatever. It's not going to be super expensive. When you start looking for the extra mods, that's when you really rack up the price. So to save currency, think about just getting 14 CDR and think about not going for Bound by Destiny with the extra influences. But the idea here is we get 52 CDR between this jewel and Awaken Cast on Crit with +3 levels, 34 CDR from the jewel, 18%, that gets us there 52. Then Forbidden Rite counts as a self-hit. Even though it deals no damage, thanks to us being CI, it still counts as a self-hit, so we're permanently generating endurance charges. One of the cool things with this is, and I love this, really, really love this, is I have a cast on damage taken Immortal Call with the buff duration per endurance charge, plus more duration support, plus efficacy. What ends up happening is, when I proc this thing, which will give me massive Fizz DR and really good LEDR, it has almost a 3-second duration, which is how long it takes for me to get back my 3 endurance charges. So it's not like I even have downtime on damage reduction, because by the time the Immortal Call's duration has ended, I have already generated those endurance charges back, which is pretty feels good, I think. Now, another thing for saving cost, cutting cost, is we are using a Sublime Vision with Discipline. This gives us a bit more ES and again, 1 more power charge. Each power charge you cut is going to lose you about 10% damage, but the thing is, this is a large majority of this character's overall cost because it forces you into all these extra influences, and you just simply do not need the extra influences to make this character functional. All these pieces could just be a Crusader base influence ring, Crusader base influence ring, a unique helmet that has some decent ES with a power charge corruption, Malachi's loop with just a corruption, Ralakesh base version, Graven Secret probably with an okay corruption or just base version, and this weapon could be uninfluenced as well. You cut out so much cost when you don't start thinking about Bound by Destiny. And another way to save cost while we're on the topic, I'm going to go over the gear craft for how to do the multi-link gloves later, but ultimately these gloves are a quality of life upgrade. They're not a damage upgrade. So you can just play a 6-link and do rare gloves initially as well if you want to cut more cost. The reason being is plus 3.5 base crit, that's a good link. 70 crit multi, that's a bad link. Crit multi support gem is like 140 crit multi or something. So this is just arbitrarily worse than a 6-link at this point. And then faster proj and faster attacks do not increase our single target. They just increase how good the build feels to play. Proj speed, very important to make Forbidden Rite feel good, but it's not going to affect your end line single target. It changes how fast the projectiles float over to the enemy, and faster attacks is a quality of life thing of how this feels to play while mapping, and ultimately it doesn't really affect your single target. With Lancy Seal Sprain, you hit those CDR breakpoints without really investing too much into attack speed. It is going to be nice to get it eventually, but let's just say you start out with a higher attack speed foil. It shouldn't feel too rough to not have faster attack. So keep that in mind. If you want to cut cost, don't do the influence things with Bound by Destiny, don't do Sublime Vision, and don't do a multi-link pair of gloves. That will cut out so much of the build cost, and then it's just going to come down to buying some easy to purchase uniques, doing some dense fossils on your rings, and doing dense fossils on a chest piece, and then going with the weapon craft as described, which will probably be your most expensive item, which you can cut a lot of the cost to by just skipping the multi-mod and just crafting hits can't be evaded with spell damage and crit multi rolled. So anyways, that goes over those mechanics. As for other things we're doing with this character, we are doing recover on ES whenever we take a physical hit. This is one of my favorite masteries. Every single ES build I use it in, it feels so freaking good. Basically, most things in the game have a large amount of shotgunning fizz hits that exist, and every time you get hit with fizz, this is a stacking buff. If I take 100 fizz hits in a second, I will then have procced up 500% ES to recover over the next 1 second. Very good for shotgun mitigation. Not as good as recover on block or instantaneous recover like Defiance of Destiny, but feels fantastic. When you start getting a good ES build, this starts making fizz not exist for you, which is pretty dang nice. After that, we are also scaling a bunch of spell block. The cool thing about Occultist is you get more ES the more spell block you get. Our character, we have 78 spell block, which nullifies a lot of the dangerous things I showcased in XR clip to open with. That's why his annihilation attack did basically nothing to us, is because we had so much block. And then we have elemental recoup on top of that. All the time when we're taking elemental damage, we're getting recoup charges that are then giving us ES back. Recoup charges, or sorry, not recoup charges, absorption charges give 12% elemental damage recouped over 4 seconds. You'll be up to about 11 charges. I'm at 13 with the Bound by Destiny, but if you're on a cheap setup, you'll be at about 11, which will then allow you over 100% elemental damage recouped over 4 seconds on Energy Shield, which feels very good when combined with things like Calm's Binding on your Mercenary. Speaking of Mercenary, I'm going to go over the one I'm using right now. I'm trying out the Eruptor / the Earthshaker because they can spawn with Determination and I think maybe Vitality or Val Vitality. And the reason I'm using them is so I can use Kingmaker. I'm not convinced this is the right play, but I'm going to work out trying some different things. I like the idea of having them have Determ Aura though and give us a way to get a little bit more fizz mitigation in the build without having to actually invest in it too much. And then on top of Kingmaker giving us crit multi and Fortify for tank, that gives us Coal and a little bit of rarity, which feels good for a bit of extra loot. I also gave them a minus Chaos Res helmet, Shaper's Seed for regen, some +1 curse shenanigans with Enfeeble for more tank, and then one of the weirder things is I gave them replica Alberons. This character can run pretty much every map mod. What I ended up noticing though was my dude was randomly dying when I did reflect maps. So in order to stop my guy from PKing himself, I gave him replica Alberons so he won't deal any elemental or physical damage because he was just killing himself to reflect, and this made it so he stopped dying when I wanted to run reflect maps. I like to just send maps and not read too many map mods, and this character can do most map mods, but if I have to start rolling over reflect because my mercenary is dying, that sounds annoying to me, and that's why we got replica Alberons. So that's all the main gear pieces, and the last piece is we rolled for Determine Aura Effect. This gives you a couple thousand more armor on your character from their Determ aura. Ultimately, you can get Determination aura effect corruptions on Amulet and rings as well, which I may invest into that later on. But for the most part, the main investment is getting a Kingmaker. So that's our Mercenary setup, yeah, as it stands currently. Another fun fact, or another fun thing we're doing, is how are we getting Wither on hit? There's a notable called Overwhelming Malice, which gives Unholy Might for 4 seconds when you crit. We are hitting a ton of times per second, and we have 100% uptime on this proc right here. And you'll see in the gray text, Unholy Might grants 100% Fizz conversion to Chaos, which we don't care about, but then it gives 25% chance to apply Wither on hit. So with this notable, we have basically 100% full effectiveness of Withers with how many times we're hitting per second, and it automates it. You can also do Balance of Terror if you want to min-max more DPS, which would allow you to go for maybe better clusters, but I think this is a good option in terms of automating it, not having to manually cast or think about casting your curse all the time for getting you Wither on hit. We have Unholy Grace, which gives us a bit of attack speed and percent damage, and that's what's going on there. Some other fun things is you'll notice our mastery is using the 20% ES if both rings have evasion. If you look at my rings, we have evasion, ES. These rings are super easy to craft. You just need the Crusader base and do some dense fossils. The only defensive prefixes you can hit on a pure Crusader base is percent ES, flat ES, and evasion. So that's why we have this mastery, is not only do we get good ES from our rings, but we get another 20% from this mastery right here, and it works out pretty dang well. After all of that, I am also using currently +1 curse with basically Assassin's Mark and Despair for a DPS setup. If you want to go for an extra clear speed setup, I would recommend looking into a curse on hit pair of gloves and maybe consider doing Profane Bloom instead. That is an option if you want to add Explode. I feel like Forbidden Rite hits pretty much the whole screen anyways, and I don't feel like we'd be improving our clear that much. But at the same time, there is a dopamine hit you get when you hear that pop sound. So consider that as an option. And especially if you're on the budget setup where you don't have to make multi-link gloves, then you can just buy a pair of gloves that has decent ES and go to hit a curse on hit with a decent ES pair of gloves. Now back to one thing I forgot to go over. If you're swapping to more budget setup, one of the other things I wanted to mention is you can also get the endurance charge without changing too much. All you have to do is spend 1 passive for 20% duration, 2 passive for additional endurance charge, which I'm going to do eventually on this character. I'm going to go to 4 endurance charges. But what this allows you to do is you swap the, I believe it's the percent, I think it might be the crit multi. I think it's a Ember affix, although it could be an Eater affix and I'm just remembering wrong. But you get the endurance charge gen per every X amount of seconds. Upgrade that to the level 5 version, which is every 11 seconds. And because your endurance charges now last 12 seconds with this small notable, you will have permanent uptime on those. If you don't want to upgrade the Exquisite mod or all the way to the tier 5, you don't want to spend any conflict orbs, you can also just grab the 100% charge duration mastery, which will allow it, if it is like a generate endurance charge every 15 seconds, that will also give you permanent uptime because that will be, it'll be generating the charge within the duration and resetting the duration. So I just wanted to mention that because that's a nice way to upgrade that. Some other fun things we're doing is because we're so heavily invested into our discipline, the +1 socketed on this weapon allows us to go for extra levels on Empower, which allows us to juice our discipline levels to get more flat out of it, as well as juicing our despair levels to get more minus curse for more single targets. So that's some fun stuff we're doing, and that's why we're using the +1 socketed gem on our weapon. Welcome to the crafting portion of the video. I'm going to go over these items from easiest to make to hardest to make. First up, we'll start with the rings. These are pretty simple. It's just dense fossil spam. Dense fossil targets evasion, flat ES, and percent ES, and makes it pretty likely that you'll get a mod like this where you have decent percent, decent flat, and decent evasion. Just dense fossil spam. The evasion enables percent ES, and then flat ES, percent ES is just good for our overall ES scaling. You can add an extra influence before you start the craft to try to hit Bound by Destiny mods, but this is not mandatory unless you have a good Bound by Destiny, and ultimately will just increase the cost quite a bit, so it's not recommended unless you have a good Bound by Destiny to support it. As for getting influences on your uniques, how do you do this? This is just basically getting the base item with an influence on it. So if you have a Harmonic Shield with a Crusader influence, and you use an Omen of Fortune and then you chance it, it'll give you a Crusader version of Malachi's Loop. Both of these bases, Riveted Boots and Harmonic Spirit Shield, there is no other unique that can occur. So if you chance orb these, you're guaranteed to hit these uniques. Now, I'd recommend for Malachi's Loop, honestly, I would use the new spam recipe for the chance orb to hit it, because Malachi's Loop is only a T4, which means it's relatively easy to chance. Omen of Fortune is pretty expensive, so I would save doing Omens for Ralakesh, which is a T1, which is much harder to chance. So use your chances wisely. Ultimately, you don't need Influence unless you're doing Bound by Destiny, but that's how you make the Influence uniques. Next up, we have the chess piece. This is literally just get a Twilight Regalia and do Dense Fossil spam, same as the rings. And then to finish up the suffixes, use some Eldritch currency like Eldritch Chaos, Eldritch Exalts, and Eldritch Annuls, just trying to hit yourself some res. That's the basic idea. If you want to go for a chess piece like mine, you have to start out with Fracturing, the Endurance Charge mod, but this is not mandatory. Right now, I only have 3 Endurance Charges because I haven't spec'd my 4th Endurance Charge yet, so it's only giving me 30 crit reduction. You don't really need this. It is going to help you a bit on crit maps, but it is unnecessary for the overall build to function. Next up, we have the helmet. I would recommend as a starter helmet, go with just a random unique that has good ES with +1 power charge. But then when you want to min-max, the way we did this helmet was we Awaken Orbed the influences onto the helmet. Then we went and took the time to add memory strands onto the helmet, where we were trying to get like 40 or higher memory strands with the Orb of Remembrance. Then after that, you want to use the Chance Orb recipe to try to make it a magic base. So it has those memory strands with a magic base. Imprint that memory amount. And then next up, you're trying to essentially regal until you get a rare version, or sorry, once you have that imprint, save it, tuck it away, and then use the Chance Orb recipe to make it a rare base. You just want to save state for the memory strands in case you accidentally delete it by scouring or alking or whatever. You don't want to actually run out of your memory strands, so you want the save state so you don't have to re-roll it, because Remembrance Orbs are expensive. Once you have a rare base that's double influence with memory strands, you're then going to go over to your bench right over here, and if Yellow Juice is still evenly priced with purple and blue, you're going to do Reforge Cold. The reason for this is with Warlord and Crusader influence, the only elemental mod that occurs only on the suffix pool is cold, because there's a fizz taken as fire for Warlord, and there's a fizz taken as lightning for Crusader. So the idea is I'm trying to craft a guaranteed mod that hits the suffix pool and doesn't fill up the prefix pool, because I'm trying to roll for power charge. You want to isolate power charge. The reason we do Reforge bench is because Chaos Orbs eat memory strands. The Harvest bench, however, does not eat memory strands. So the goal is to spam Reforge Cold until you hit +1 power charge. And then on top of that, you need to annul off the extra prefix mods. So it's just power charge by itself. Prefixes can't be changed, and Scour. This should give you a magic base that is double influenced with +1 power charge with memory strands. You're then going to do a prefixes can't be changed, and you're going to start imprint crafting, where you're going to imprint, regal, reforge defense. And every time you do this, you're looking for decent ES mods. The reason we stacked up this memory strand, the reason we took all this extra effort to get memory strand on there, is so that way, if you have a helmet that has T2, T3 ES, when you hit some decent ES mods, you can attempt an Orb of Unraveling to upgrade to higher tier energy shield mods. This will greatly increase the likelihood that you can get good ES mods throughout the process of the imprint craft and save you a lot on currency. I myself hit double T1 ES after only having double T2 using this method. I can't guarantee it's always going to hit upgrades for you, but that's the idea. It's trying to get ES mods isolated with power charge and then attempting to upgrade them with the Orb of Unraveling. You want to be within a couple tiers. Don't try to upgrade a T8 ES mod to a T1, so keep that in mind. That's how you do the prefixes, and then the suffixes do meta mod crafting, trying to get res. That's the idea for the helmet. Now moving on to the gloves. This glove craft is essentially you use Essence of Horror to get the Socketed Gem crit mod, annul off all the extra mods until it's just Socketed Gems, and this could depend on the price of imprints. It might just be more efficient to just spam Essence of Horror, but I think generally speaking, imprints are cheap enough where you should do what I'm going to say right now, which is get Essence of Horror, annul off every extra mod that's on the suffix pool. Suffix can't be changed, Scour. This will give you a magic base with the horror mod. Then you're going to do a suffixes can't be changed on it with a bristle matron. And then you're going to imprint craft similar to how you did the helmet, and you're going to do regals and reforge speed, trying to hit faster attacks. If you hit faster attacks, you need to annul off the extra suffix on the item, and then you need to do a suffix can't be changed reforge caster. The only caster mod that can occur on the gloves is Socketed Spell Crit. You have a 1 in 3 to hit T1. Every time you hit too low of a tier, you can try to annul save and go again. Once you have the suffixes at an acceptable level, do a suffix can be changed, reforge speed. The only reforge speed mod you can hit at this point is faster projectiles in the prefix pool. You're going to then block mana or block life and slam, trying to hit ES and then benchcraft ES. That's what I'd recommend for the glove craft. Last but not least, we have the weapon craft, which I kind of messed up the recording of, so I'm redoing it right now. As for the weapon craft, how does this work? You do Essence of Woe Deafening, that is this 83 to 94 spell damage mod, until you hit T1 crit multi. You need to annul off every extra affix. So you should get a base that has +1 socketed and 80 to 90% spell damage. After that, you are then going to do a multi-mod, cannot roll attack, and you're going to slam. The good news is, if you're not doing Bound by Destiny and you have no extra influence mods, every attack mod besides +1 socketed is a attack tag affix, whereas gem, +1 gem is the only one you can hit. So if you do cannot roll attack plus the multi-mod and you have crit multi, you have full suffixes, the only thing you can hit with the Exalt Orb is +1 socketed. Now, if you have Warlord affix because you're trying to get yourself the Bound by Destiny proc for like Endurance Charge or Fizz Taken As or something, then you'll notice there are 2 affixes which do not have the attack tag. The good news is percent damage over time is the weapon caster damage prefix, which shares the mod group with percent spell damage. You see percent spell damage here, weapon caster prefix. We already have that on the item with spell damage. So that's effectively blocked from occurring, which means the slam then has a pretty much 50-50 chance to get +1 socketed or get gain damages extra. You will have to do an annul save or do a multi-mod plus cannot roll caster plus suffixes can be changed to have basically a guarantee way to wipe off the gain damage when you hit it, and then do a bristle matron to re-add the suffix can be changed every time the annul removes that, but that'll protect the spell damage if you don't want to go back to the step 1 of the craft. Once you have that, if you have the additional craft mod, then you can craft prefixes and suffixes cannot be changed, and a Veiled Chaos will guarantee a veiled item and re-roll the item. Now, if prefixes and suffixes can't be changed, your item is effectively locked in place. When you do a Veiled Chaos, it'll give you a veiled mod as an outcome in the suffix pool, because that's the only open affix like we have here, and then we can just bench craft a mod to block, unveil, and then bench craft the affixes we want. So that works out pretty dang well. As for the non-additional craft outcome, you have to settle, in my opinion, with hits can't be evaded and crit multi. The odds or the way to force a similar item without the +1 craft is just not very doable, because you can get an unveiled crit multi mod, but you're not going to get hits can't be evaded and a bench crafted additional suffix, because all the suffixes that are important for this build is basically just crit multi, spell damage, socketed gem, and then bench crafts like hits can't be evaded, unveiled percent damage per charge, stuff like that. So in this case, the multi-mod is probably your best bet if you can't afford the additional craft enchant. So otherwise, once you have this, all you need to do for blocking is remove off your bench crafts, and I would recommend blocking the increased crit strikes plus attack speed or plus crit, or do the one that has attack speed. Both of these block a similar amount of affixes. I'm going to do crit, and this should allow us to hit double damage, crit multi, or some other useful affix. So I'll go ahead and unveil this right now to show you. Crit multi nearby enemies, trigger attack speed, double damage while focus. Double damage while focus is good, crit multi is good. I'm going to go with crit multi on this sword. And there we have it. We have crit multi, and now all I need to do is do power charge. Well, first I got to remove the mods. Then I'm going to do power charge. You can also do double damage here as well. And then I'm going to do hits can't be evaded, which I don't have enough exalts for. But if I had enough exalts for, I would craft hits can't be evaded. So that's how the crafts work. The +1 enchant allows you to get one more mod on the item, whereas the non-+1 enchant is just a cheaper item to hit, because you just multi-mod and you call it a day. That is how you do the weapon craft. Now, I think I've covered most of the things about the character. Probably the last thing I'll end with is you'll notice I have not filled all my suffix. This is due to pure laziness. There are gem sockets you can add in here to increase the power of the character. I'm just right now having a good time playing it, and I'm just not thinking about it right now. I will end up probably filling these gem sockets with other useful things, but you can come up with your own use cases for these extra gem sockets. For example, you could do cast when damage taken, Purifying Flame for Conk Ground. There's lots of things you can do to add additional power. That's up to you. Eventually, I'll add some sockets based on what I think is good to do. But for right now, I'm just having fun playing the character as it is. Alrighty. I think I went over all the crafts after the crafting section and covered the baseline mechanics of how the character works and stuff. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this update video, or like this, not as necessarily an update video, but overview video of the character I've been playing. And I will be taking this character hopefully to do some Void Valdo maps to avenge my death to the Shaper Balls from my first character. And we'll see how that goes. As always, thanks for watching, Exiles. Take care and peace out. Have a good one. No way. All right, well. Rest in peace. I guess there we go. Domed by the Shaper Ball pen. Just like that. Gamer 5 seconds ago. Now I get to start the Forbidden Rite character.